The Scent of Rain on Stone. When Evelyn Clark returned to Florence, the city seemed smaller, quieter, almost fragile beneath the burden of years. 12 winters had passed since she last walked its narrow streets, and yet each stone remembered her name. Time, she thought, does not erase, it only waits. Her arrival was not dramatic. No one awaited her at the station. The rain was thin and patient, the sort that dampens thought more than clothing. She walked to her lodging in silence, carrying with her the weight of unspoken reconciliations. Evelyn was 40 now, successful in the public sense, lectures, exhibitions, critics who called her formidable. Yet within her a quiet fatigue had grown, the fatigue of a life measured by achievements rather than affections. Florence had once been the opposite of all that, a city of unhurried mornings, of manuscripts and candlelight, and of one man who believed stillness to be a form of prayer. Julian Marlowe. He had been a restorer of rare books, a man of gentle discipline whose speech was slow and whose silences were not empty. She remembered his hands, always faintly stained by ink, and his habit of reading the margins of a text before the text itself, as if the ghost of a reader might tell more truth than the author. When she left, she told herself it was for the sake of ambition. He did not ask her to stay. "You will find the world," he had said, "but remember, it will not always be kind enough to return you." Now she found his shop exactly where it had always been, down the narrow Via dei Neri. The gold letters on the glass were faded, the bell above the door still crooked. Inside, the same smell of old parchment and sandalwood lingered. Julian looked older, yes, but not diminished. Age had refined him, not reduced him. His beard carried streaks of silver, his posture the quiet strength of a man who had made peace with solitude. "Evelyn," he said, without surprise. "Julian," she answered, equally calm. There was no embrace, no awkwardness, only a recognition that belonged to those who have already said everything and now prefer the truth of silence. He poured tea, as he used to, and asked after her life. She spoke of cities and exhibitions, of critics and fatigue. He listened, neither admiring nor judging, as if the words were merely leaves carried by the wind. When the conversation waned, her eyes fell upon the desk where a pile of parchment lay half-bound. The handwriting upon it was small and elegant. "You still translate poetry," she said. "I do," he replied. "Letters from a poet to a woman he never dared to name." Did she love him? Enough to remain unnamed. The words lingered. Outside, the afternoon dimmed. A young apprentice entered, a tall girl named Clara, offering a bundle of vellum. She greeted Evelyn politely and disappeared into the back room. Evelyn watched her go with an expression that mingled curiosity and melancholy. "She is learning the trade," Julian explained. "I took her in when her father died. She reminds me of another young woman I once knew, restless, impatient with silence, too clever for her own comfort." Evelyn smiled faintly. "And did she ever learn patience?" "In time," he said, and for a moment his eyes held hers, not in reproach, but in remembrance. When the girl was gone and the lamps were lit, Evelyn rose to leave. At the threshold, Julian placed a small parcel in her hand, letters bound with a blue ribbon. "I wrote them after you left," he said. "You may read them now, or not at all." She carried them back to her room that night. The letters were many, written in his measured, deliberate hand. They spoke not of longing, but of endurance, of the quiet courage it takes to remain kind in a world built on noise. By the final letter, she was crying, not from sadness, but from the strange recognition of being seen even in absence. The next morning she returned to the shop. The rain had stopped, but the stones still glistened. He was at his desk, reading. She stood silently until he looked up. "Julian," she said, "you once told me the world would not always return me, but here I am." "And have you forgiven it?" "I think so." He closed his book. Then perhaps you can forgive yourself." They spoke no further. She sat by the window while he worked, the sound of turning pages steady as breath. Hours passed. Evening settled. When at last she rose to go, she said, "I'm leaving tomorrow. There is nothing left to prove there, but I must close what I opened." He nodded. "Return when you no longer measure your life by its noise." That night, she wrote a single letter and left it beneath the inkwell on his desk. It contained one line only. "Love does not return. It waits until we do." Julian found it the next morning. He smiled, folded it once, and placed it among the poet's letters where it belonged. And though Evelyn crossed the ocean once more, Florence did not lose her this time. The city kept her in its quiet light, in the reflection of the river, in the scent of rain on stone. The end.